From where we left off yesterday in Genesis 49 to where we pick up today in Exodus chapter 12, a few things have happened to the nation of Israel that you need to be aware of. Here in God's story of redemption, and as we track through towards the cross, the nation of Israel has been moved to Egypt. Jacob, or whose name was changed to Israel, you remember, he moves down to Egypt with all of his children as his son Joseph rose in prominence there. Now that we're in Egypt, two things have happened. Israel, the nation, grows exponentially. They are now a huge nation. God multiplied them, and there's tons of them. Also, Israel, the nation, has become enslaved. Now, this huge nation that is stuck in Egypt, and we're picking up 400-ish years later. So you gotta understand that. They move there small, they become enslaved, they're now large. All that this nation knows is bondage. The history of most of these people, their entire lives is nothing but stuck. They're helpless. They can't get out. They're stuck. They're in bondage. That's a picture of man in sin. We are stuck, or were stuck, if it wasn't for Christmas time. This is all we know. We're born into sin. We live in sin. We are dead in sin, and we could not possibly get out ourselves. Total bondage as depraved people. But to the nation of Israel, right, as all they know is the bondage of Egypt, God promised to deliver them. And how does God do that, right? You know the story. God sends these plagues into Egypt as he's showing and proving himself to be greater than the false gods of Egypt, right? So as God sends plagues in that demonstrate he is bigger than their false gods, he shows himself to be the only true living God. That leads us to our text today, the 10th plague. The 10th plague in Egypt, the death of the firstborn. But before that 10th plague takes place, God tells Egypt to pick a lamb. Pick a lamb, one without spot. Kill that lamb as a substitute, right? A substitutionary death so that the firstborn of your household won't have to die. The spotless lamb will take its place. Then take some blood and spread it on the doorpost, showing that a death has already occurred. The substitutionary death is finished in this household. When God's judgment came into Egypt, it passed over all of the houses covered by the blood of the spotless lamb. This ultimately releases Israel from their bondage in Egypt. But it's also very foretelling. Remember how God tells us the story through these people without these people even knowing it? That's what's happening here. God has foretold that they're in bondage in Egypt, just like we are in bondage in sin. And God delivers through his spotless lamb. Right, in the New Testament, you have John the Baptist pointing to the coming Jesus and saying, "Behold the Lamb of God that actually takes away the sin of the world." You see, Israel chose a spotless lamb, and God used it to free them from Egypt. God chose a spotless lamb, Jesus Christ, and used him to free us from the bondage of sin and death. Christmas, we're celebrating the birth of God's deliverance. We're celebrating the birth of God's Lamb. This is Jesus Christ, the one that delivers us.